History is a tapestry woven with threads of truth and shadows of deception. For decades, many of the stories we are about to explore were dismissed as the delusions of the paranoid. They were the tinfoil hat theories of their time. Until they weren't. When the classified files are finally opened and the whistleblowers emerge, the truth often proves far more disturbing than the fiction. Today, we step into the hidden layer of history to examine 10 conspiracies that were once called crazy, but turned out to be absolutely true. But how does a secret remain hidden for so long? Let's peel back the first layer. During the height of Prohibition in the 1920s, the United States government was desperate. Bootleggers were stealing industrial alcohol, intended for paints and solvents, and redistilling it into gin. The authorities decided on a lethal solution. They ordered companies to add toxic chemicals to industrial spirits, including formaldehyde and kerosene. But the most deadly additive was methyl alcohol. They knew this would not stop the drinking. They knew it would only make the drinkers sick. By the time Prohibition ended, it is estimated that the government's chemists' war had killed over 10,000 people. It was a mass poisoning sanctioned at the highest levels of power. For years, the public suspected the government was making the booze lethal on purpose. Critics called it a murderous conspiracy theory. And yet, the federal records eventually proved it. The government had deliberately poisoned its own citizens to enforce a moral crusade. But the question remains, was this the only time they experimented on the public? As we will see, the 1950s would bring even darker secrets to light. But the question remains, was this the only time they experimented on the public? As we will see, the 1950s would bring even darker secrets to light. In the early 1950s, rumors began to swirl about brainwashing techniques being used by the Soviet bloc. In response, the CIA launched a project so secretive that even its own directors were barely briefed on its full scope. This was Project MKUltra. Led by the enigmatic Sidney Gottlieb, the program sought to master the human mind. They used unwitting subjects, prisoners, psychiatric patients, and even random citizens to test the effects of LSD, sensory deprivation, and extreme hypnosis. Many of these victims had no idea they were part of an experiment. Some never recovered. Others took their own lives. For decades, the CIA denied that such a program existed. They dismissed reports of mind control experiments as classic Cold War paranoia. However, in 1975, the Church Committee uncovered the truth. Although many records had been destroyed, enough survived to reveal a sprawling network of 80 institutions involved in these illegal acts. It was a direct violation of the Nuremberg Code, a betrayal of the very people the agency was sworn to protect. But could the government go even further? Could they plan to kill their own people to start a war? The term false flag is often thrown around in the darkest corners of the internet. It refers to an act committed with the intent of framing an opponent. In 1962, the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States military proposed exactly that. It was called Operation Northwoods. The plan was chillingly precise. They suggested staging acts of terrorism in American cities, sinking boats of Cuban refugees, and even blowing up a U.S. ship in Guantanamo Bay. The goal was simple: to create a wave of public outrage that would justify a full-scale invasion of Cuba. The documents were signed by all members of the Joint Chiefs and presented to the Secretary of Defense. It wasn't a theory, it was a formal military proposal. Fortunately, President John F. Kennedy rejected the plan. For 30 years, the existence of Operation Northwoods remained a classified secret. When the documents were finally declassified in the late 1990s, they sent shockwaves through the historical community. It proved that at the highest levels of military leadership, the lives of American citizens were seen as expendable assets in a geopolitical game. But what happens when the deception is used to fool an entire nation into war? In October 1990, a 15-year-old girl known only as Naira stood before the Congressional Human Rights Caucus. With tears streaming down her face, she told a horrific story. She claimed to have seen Iraqi soldiers removing babies from incubators in a Kuwaiti hospital, leaving them to die on the cold floor. Her testimony was broadcast around the world. It was cited by President George H.W. Bush and several senators to justify military intervention. The public was horrified. The path to the Gulf War was paved. But there was a problem. The story was a lie. Naira was not a volunteer nurse. She was the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States. Her testimony had been carefully choreographed by the massive PR firm Hill Knowlton. They were paid millions by a Kuwaiti-funded group to sway American public opinion. Independent investigations later found no evidence that the incubator incident ever occurred. It was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. The conspiracy to lie to the public wasn't a rumor, it was a paid contract. And yet, the machinery of secret deals didn't stop there. In fact, some of the most complex schemes involved the very weapons meant for defense. In the mid-1980s, the Reagan administration faced two major problems. First, American hostages were being held in Lebanon. Second, Congress had explicitly banned the government from providing further aid to the Contra rebels in Nicaragua. To some, the solution was a secret, illegal pipeline. Senior officials, including Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, orchestrated a deal to sell weapons to Iran, an avowed enemy of the United States. The goal was to secure the release of the hostages. But the money from those sales didn't go back to the Treasury. Instead, it was funneled through secret offshore accounts to fund the Contras. It was a double-blind operation that bypassed the law and the Constitution. When the story first broke in a Lebanese magazine, the administration denied it. They called the reports baseless speculation. However, the subsequent investigations revealed a web of deception that reached deep into the White House. The conspiracy was a documented reality of shadow diplomacy and off-the-books financing. But while some conspiracies involve money and weapons, others involve the most intimate aspects of human health. And those secrets can last for generations. For 40 years, the United States Public Health Service conducted a study that would become a synonym for medical betrayal. Starting in 1932, 600 African-American men in Tuskegee, Alabama, were enrolled in a study of syphilis. Most were poor sharecroppers. They were told they were being treated for bad blood. In reality, they were never given proper treatment at all. Even after penicillin became the standard cure for syphilis in the 1940s, the researchers withheld it. They wanted to observe the natural progression of the fatal disease until the men died. The participants were never told they had syphilis, and they were never given the chance to be cured. For decades, the medical community remained silent. It wasn't until 1972, when a whistleblower leaked the story to the press, that the horror finally ended. The men had been used as human lab rats in a state-sponsored conspiracy of silence. But if the government could lie about health, could they also lie about the reasons for entering a world-altering war? The answer lies in the murky waters of Southeast Asia. On the night of August 4, 1964, the Pentagon reported that North Vietnamese torpedo boats had launched a second unprovoked attack against the USS Maddox in the Gulf of Tonkin. Within hours, President Lyndon B. Johnson ordered retaliatory airstrikes. This event led directly to the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, giving the president the power to escalate the war in Vietnam without a formal declaration. But there was a catch. The second attack never happened. Even at the time, the commander on the scene reported that freak weather and eager sonar operators had likely mistaken the sound of their own propellers for enemy torpedoes. Despite these doubts, the administration presented the attack as a certainty to the American public. They needed a catalyst, and they used a ghost attack to find it. It took decades and the release of thousands of pages of NSA documents to confirm what many conspiracy theorists had suspected all along. The incident was a fabrication used to lock the nation into a decade of conflict. But the government wasn't just looking outward. They were also looking at their own people through the lens of a secret war. Under the leadership of J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI launched a program designed to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize domestic political organizations. This was COINTELPRO. From 1956 to 1971, the agency targeted civil rights leaders, anti-war activists, and feminist groups. Their most famous target was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The FBI sent him anonymous letters suggesting he should take his own life and used illegal wiretaps to gather personal information. They didn't just watch these groups, they actively tried to destroy them from within. They used black bag jobs, illegal break-ins to steal documents and plant evidence. For years, activists claimed they were being followed and sabotaged by the government. They were ignored or called paranoid. Then in 1971, a group of activists broke into an FBI office in Pennsylvania and stole files that proved the program existed. The truth was finally out. The FBI had been running a secret war against the American people's right to protest. But as technology evolved, did these programs disappear? Or did they just move into the digital shadows? For years, the idea that the government was reading every email and listening to every phone call was the ultimate conspiracy theory. People who covered their webcams or used encrypted messaging were often mocked. But in 2013, a technical contractor named Edward Snowden walked out of an NSA facility with a cache of top-secret documents. Those documents revealed PRISM, a massive global surveillance system. It showed that the NSA was collecting the private communications of millions of people worldwide, often with the cooperation of major tech companies. They had direct access to servers, allowing them to track location, search history, and private messages in real time. This wasn't just targeted surveillance of criminals, it was a net cast over the entire planet. The government's initial reaction was to brand Snowden a traitor and deny the scope of the program. But the evidence was undeniable. The conspiracy to build a global panopticon was no longer a theory, it was a proven fact. However, these revelations lead us to a final, vital question. How do we distinguish between a baseless myth and a hidden truth? The answer lies in the courage of those who refuse to stop asking. History teaches us that secrets have a way of surfacing, but only if we are willing to look. The cases we've explored today prove that conspiracy is not always a dirty word. Sometimes it is a historical reality. The difference between a myth and a fact is evidence. Thank you for joining us in The Hidden Layer. If you found these revelations as fascinating as we did, please subscribe and share your thoughts below. Until next time, keep questioning the narrative.